think I'm slightly overdressed, aren't I? Well, think of it as dressing up for a wedding. Now I think I'm underdressed. As I'm standing here and talking to all of you, my 12 siblings, their 9 spouses, my 30-plus aunts and uncles, hundreds of cousins, hundreds if not thousands of community members are gathered in Brooklyn to celebrate a wedding, my brother's wedding. I was not just not invited, but very explicitly invited not to come. The reason why that is might be a bit complicated, but at the end of the day, it boils down to one word: fitting in. You don't fit in. You're not doing what we want you to do, so we don't want to know you. It feels a bit like today it's all about weddings, and we're going from one to another. So I think I can use that as a gateway to explain to you all a bit about my background. I think compared to the other 2 speakers here, there's very few people in the room who have a good understanding of where I come from. I'm not from Utah. I'm from a few thousand miles away. Culturally, I'm from a few hundred years away. So I think I'm going to use weddings as a gateway to try to explain to you and capture a culture that you might have never heard of, but you will be shocked on how much you actually know about it and how much you have heard of it. So let me explain a bit how marriages work, and I have a few points outlined here. People are socialized as boys and girls, and I'm going to follow that path for the rest of the evening. When I say boys and girls, doesn't necessarily mean they are boys and girls. I went to a school that was supposed to be a boys-only school, and besides me, there was at least one other girl that I'm aware of that went to that boys-only school. So it's people that are socialized, don't interact with each other, and in most families, even your first cousins. Weddings are arranged, and at times, bordering on forced. Not always, but it gets really, really close to that. And very importantly, which is something that some of you might relate a bit more, the whole community revolves around marriage. Marriage is not just something that you do because you want to procreate, because you want to have kids. It's your entire status in the community is based on are you married or not, to the extent that your dress code is entirely different based on whether you marry or not, and that's for man and for woman. The LGBTQ community is not even hated. We don't exist, which is a very important detail compared to, I find, a lot of other conservative communities or cultish communities in the US that are anti-LGBT. Not even that. I personally was unaware that trans people exist until I was 20 years old. And most people in the community, until 2 years ago, didn't know that trans people exist. Though I believe that has changed, and we'll get to that a bit more. The last part here is just a logo from an organization called Unchained at Last. From my experience when I talk to people about everything people are going through, arranged marriages, semi-forced marriages, people can't leave. For any of you who are interested, there's a documentary that just came out on Netflix called One of Us, that just released this week. And it's amazing in capturing that community. And one of the stories is a woman that was also went through an arranged marriage and is now her kids are being taken away from her. If you want to help, remember this and look them up online. Now I want to show you a video, which will give you a visual for a bit of what weddings look like, but more importantly, a bit about my family. The person that you're going to see dancing, you know what? Let me just play it and we'll talk about it after that. I think I'm going to have to do it manually. way, if there's enough time, I would ask people to give me some feedback and what they've taken out from this video. We don't have enough time. A quick context. The person that you saw dancing in the second part of the video is my great uncle, my mother's great uncle, my great uncle. His name was Rabbi Shlomo Halberstam. He was the leader of one of the biggest Hasidic sects in Brooklyn following the Holocaust, after World War II. Hasidic communities, which is where I grew up, and which is where I'm going to try in 5 minutes to give you a very quick introduction to how they live, revolve around the supreme, what I call them the supreme leaders, Ayatollah, king, whatever you want to think of. Think of someone who is a monarch in terms of it's dynasties. There's been the same probably 10 dynasties that have ruled the Hasidic community for the last 200 years. By now, we're all related to each other. And obviously, there's no corruption because everything stays in the family, right? So probably everything is perfect. The leaders today are just leaders because their great whatever grandfather 200 years ago was probably a really charismatic leader. By now, it's just in the family. The wedding that you just saw, the first one was a wedding of his grandson marrying the granddaughter of another big Hasidic leader from Israel. And the second one was a wedding of his own granddaughter in Brooklyn. Whichever scene you want to take from that, you can look on the beauty if you want, I will allow that. You can look on the part of one, I would say, poor 18-year-old girl in the middle of a whole room of thousands of men, holding a rope, can't even touch her own grandfather, whatever you want to look at that. I just wanted to give you a bit of a visual talking about it. Now, let me give you a few pointers to that community, and then we'll drop that and go to the more fun part about my own life. So, what are the Hasidic community? And I'm intentionally going to start after World War II, because the way they live today, the way I grew up, the way the community lives today, as much as they will claim that this is authentic, they will want you to believe that this is how Moses lived in the desert for 3,000 years ago. It's very much only what happened after the war. Reasons are, a lot of them, I don't want to go into that too much. So let's focus a bit what happened. A few Rebbes. Rebbes are Hasidic leaders, again, supreme leaders, whatever you want to call them, settled in Brooklyn in the 1950s and started building up a devout and sheltered community. What they were trying to do, they were trying to mirror an 18th century Eastern Europe that never existed. They have this like nostalgic, idealistic version of what there's a word for it in Yiddish, which means village, but it also comes a lot more to it, of this like ideal life where everyone was just, imagine here, this ideal life, everyone is just part of the church in every way and follows everything the church leaders are telling them without doing anything else. This is what they want us to believe, and this is what they are trying to recreate. As a result of that, you have this extremely sheltered community. The title is intentionally, they are the most gender-segregated society in North America and perhaps in the world. And I tell that every time. If you can prove to me any other society in North America that's more sheltered, you have one. More segregated by gender, sheltered maybe, but I'm talking gender-segregated, to an extreme. They don't speak the language. You have thousands and thousands of mainly boys who grow up in New York City and can't have a conversation in English, can't solve the simplest fraction problem when it comes to math, know nothing about American history, don't have any social studies, don't have any skills to be able to integrate in a workforce. They don't go to college. You get engaged when you're around 16 to 18, you get married, and you have kids. Birth control is unacceptable, and you have huge families. In my personal example, I have 12 siblings. I'm the 6th child out of 13. I am the first question mark after 5 girls. The reason why I put that on there, though to me it's not a question mark, I'm just the 6th girl. But to my father, he really wanted a boy. And it's in a community that is so sexist. It's very obvious that you want a boy. In my family, it's even more specific because it meant that my father is going to be a rabbi at some point. He's going to run his own synagogue, which he didn't at that point, but he does by now. And you need a son to take over your place because, as mentioned, the leader just stays in the family. So I grew up under all these stories that my father would tell me how he so wanted to have a boy. And I would listen to Dad as a child and be like, yeah, sorry, Daddy, that's not happening. He did have. I have 4 younger brothers, but he was really hoping for a boy. And my family's part of all these like really beautiful or corrupt or whatever you want to call that dynasties. Both of my parents come from rabbinic dynasties. Both of my grandparents had their own synagogues. I'm related to pretty much every Hasidic leader in the world today. Personally, I was engaged at 17, married at 18, had a son at 19, divorced at 21. Good. Now let me tell you a bit about my personal experience growing up, my life, and what I want to tell you all today. So the pictures are just, again, I like visuals. So looking from the bottom, the top one actually is at my own wedding, fall 2010. The bottom one, spring 2013, actually my first official photo shoot. I was already on the way out at that point. Fall 2014, my first semester at Columbia. Summer 2015, a few days before I came out, and a photo shoot a few weeks ago. I promise you, this main photo is not Photoshopped. I just wish I always looked like that, but it's not Photoshopped. A lot of LGBT people have aha moments. Like you would ask, like, when did you know? How did you realize? I don't necessarily have an aha moment when I woke up one day and I'm like, hey, I'm a girl. I woke up one day and I'm like, hey, everyone says that I'm a boy, which is not accurate. Why is that? I had a lot of different ways of dealing with it. When I was 7 years old, I would collect newspaper clippings that talk about organ transplants. And in my mind, I'm going to collect enough ideas on how to do a lung transplant, a kidney transplant, heart transplant, and then I'm just going to do a full body transplant because that's how it works, right? When that didn't work, when I was 9 years old, I wrote a prayer. And every night before bed, when we did traditional bedtime prayers, I would add this prayer to God, I just want to wake up as a girl. When I was around 12, I told myself, okay, listen, you're crazy. There's no one else in the world like you. I didn't even know that gay people exist, so of course not trans people. Whatever you feel like, get over it. It has to be something else. So I did one of the worst things ever. Not the worst, but one of the worst things. I asked questions, God forbid. One of my first questions was when we were studying something of what our rabbi, some of our teachings, and I dared to ask my teacher if it's actually true. It was some like hypothetical mystic medication and how, like, this whole story on how you can see demons. And I asked my teacher, can I try it at home? Is it going to work? My teacher freaked out at me and told me, if you're going to continue to ask questions like that, you're going to end up going off the path. You're going to end up leaving our community, which is the worst thing. It's like telling someone, if you continue down that path, you're going to end up in jail. It's the same thing. And he kicked me out of class. That, as a result, only made me question even more. When I was around 15, I almost dropped everything, ended up surviving until we started expecting my son. I think we all know that society today, and that is something that unfortunately made it into the extremely sheltered society that I grew up in, we gender babies before they are born. I mean, come on, you have to know, are you going to do a pink nursery or blue nursery? Because we all know what happens if you're going to put a boy in a pink nursery. I mean, God forbid. So it's a big deal. And in our community, specifically, there's a tradition not to figure out. We wouldn't ask the doctor what's the gender of the baby. We actually didn't know until my son was born. But it was still there. It was prevalent. And I remember thinking, okay, here I am passing on my genes, whatever they are. I'm having a kid. I don't think I said genes because I probably didn't know what genes are. But I'm passing on something. And what if my kid has the same feelings as me? I didn't know what I'm feeling. I would classify it as gender began punching me in the face, quite literally. As a result of that, very long story short, I ended up leaving the community in 2012-13, and I finally came out in November of 2015. Now, everything that I've just told you, you can go online and find videos from anyone from Showtime to Pop Sugar, Now This, I have lost track, New York Times, CNN. My whole life story is on there. You didn't need me to come down here and talk about it. Sorry. I want to take this time a bit to focus on something else, which I think is not spoken enough, maybe. I mean, maybe it is spoken enough, but not enough in I think, LGBT communities. We focus a lot on queer rights. There's been a very famous hashtag the last few weeks that some of you have probably seen. Me Too. Now, personally, I think that at least in New York City, any woman who claims they haven't been sexually harassed is either ignorant or just a liar. If for any of you who have ever visited New York, if you're a woman, you know if you're going to walk down the street, at least in certain areas, after 10 o'clock, you are going to get catcalled. Anything from, hey, sweetie, to what's your number, to nice ass, to whatever. I don't have to tell. There's obviously other stories where it gets more intense. There is subtle workplace sexual harassment. There is feelings of women reporting that they felt like they're not heard the same way their male co-workers are, and so on. Now, I don't know how many people could say that they have seen both sides of it. And I can, and I want to talk about it and not stop talking about it. I started school at Columbia in the fall of 2014, pretending to be a guy. I think I was really bad at it. My fashion style was terrible, and everything else as a guy sucked, but I tried. And that's the way I was perceived. For any of you who know anything about Columbia University, it's probably one of the most liberal places in the universe. I transitioned in the beginning of fall of 2015. It didn't take more than a few months to have a TA, a guy, that I was seeing, telling me in a very flirtatious way that maybe he can help me study at some point because I didn't take a certain exam, and maybe he can help me with that. It didn't take to the end of the semester for me to start realizing that specifically, for some reason, I took a philosophy class that semester, and specifically in one class, I am taken quite not as serious. It could be was the topic, which is philosophy, which is sometimes perceived as a very male subject for whichever reason that I don't know, but I was taken a lot less serious. And then there came the daily, simply from the day that I started passing, walking down the streets and passing as a woman, the daily harassment. And I would talk to my friends, women, and they were all like, yeah. And I was like, what? Yeah, this is life, at least in New York and at least in big cities. And I'm refusing to make peace with that. It has been 2 years, and I'm refusing to make peace with that. But it seems to me that most people that grew up being socialized as women are sadly just growing accustomed to it. I really hope that I can continue to spread this message. And if there's someone out there who thinks for a split second that it's maybe not as bad as you think, please come talk to me. As a queer woman, because I'm trans, and at the same time, I'm also privileged to some extent. I am binary. I identify as female in every way, and I dress like it. And I have no problem with it. I love it. But at the same time, I've experienced the harassment. And no, it's not bad. It's a lot worse. I don't know what to do to stop that, but it has to stop. How many times are we? Okay, sorry. Okay, I can talk the whole night. I don't mind. Okay. To the more fun parts, I guess, which I wanted to talk. So these were, I guess, like trying to tell you a bit of my story, but I'm telling you again. There's probably 20 hours of me giving speeches, another 10 hours of TV and live interviews and whatever media. If you want to know more about my story, it's very exotic. Just go online and know it. It's not that interesting for me to tell it again. But I do want to talk about the media. I have so far done, I don't know how many interviews. I stopped counting when I reached 150, so I have no idea where I am at the moment. The media is a very hot topic, right? I mean, I don't want to talk politics, but it's almost impossible. And there's all like whatever, what's real and what's fake, and like who can you trust and who can't you, and so on. These are just a few clippings from a few newspapers. And I want you all to look on different ways. So like obviously I'm not going to deny it. I'm exotic. I have an exotic story. I might have forgot to mention it, but I was the first trans person in my community. I mentioned before that until 2 years ago, no one in my community knew about trans people. The biggest reason why that changed is all of this and me refusing to shut up. And I'm continuing to refusing to shut up. And I got to a point where I think I've managed to reach everyone in that community. They all know that there's this like crazy person who did some crazy things, but they all know about it. But at the same time, some people are going to try to focus on facts, and some are going to try to focus on really cool headlines. I left Hasidism to become a woman. That's the New York Post. The biggest mistake that I ever did with the media was talking to them. Sorry if there's anyone who likes them. Besides the fact that this is inaccurate, it made it great. It was on page 6, and it made a really great impact. The Daily Dot. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of them, but the reason why I like that because they focused on something that no one likes to focus that much. What exactly did I do? They focus on blogging instead of being like someone, like as opposed to member of prominent Hasidic family, whoa, and so on. I can leave it up for a second so you can all see what's going on. I do want to talk about 2 videos. I didn't want to put in more videos because I don't know how much time we still have. But if you go online, if you go to my YouTube channel, you can just YouTube Abby Stein. It's going to come up probably in the beginning. There's 2 videos that I've done right in the beginning, talking summer of 2016. One of them with CNN, called Great Big Story, which is a CNN short video company, and one of them with Fox News. I don't care what any of you think about Fox News. But as I've said, I've done interviews with over 150 news stations. Only one of them straight up lied in the video. Everyone manipulated facts. Media is the media. Besides the fact that the media doesn't exist, which is also important. Everyone was like, the media. What is the media? There's no such a thing. Everyone does their own thing. But the only video that I've had, a video made, articles, I don't know, I haven't read. Most of these articles, I only read what's it called? The title? Headlines. Sorry, English is my 4th language. Forgive me. But they were the only ones who have straight up lied. And if you don't trust me, go up, watch it, and see for yourself. National, international. Again, the same story. Some of them great, some of them bad. Here, you were talking about gay agenda. I don't know if you can see that, but this one, which is from a British newspaper, actually says, sex change rabbi, my trans agenda. Which I have no problem. I will promise you all, I have an agenda and I tend to stay on it for as long as I can. But I'm not denying it. But the title, yeah, whatever. Okay. This is my final part, and kind of a plea. What can we do? And there's 2 parts here. I want to focus a bit on, for trans people in general, and then people coming from fundamentalist backgrounds. So I think I'm going to assume that, given the title of this talk, QTalks, most people here are at least semi-open to LGBT people, hopefully. So a question that I get a lot is like, what can we do? People who want to be supportive. Tell me, we are in a generation where people don't like to read an article that's longer than, I don't know, 200 words. People don't watch a clip. Apparently, statistically, any clip on Facebook that's more than 2 minutes gets like half the amount of views or something, whatever. We have an extremely short attention span. So tell me, give me a list of what we can do. And the problem with this is that there is no list because there is no one-size-fits-all with anything. But here are a few things. First and foremost, be vocal. And by vocal, I don't mean you have to go on the street and scream. If you want to do that, amazing, go ahead and do that. But by vocal, I mean even the small things. People would think, oh, I'm just going to share this link on Facebook that is very supportive and affirming about trans people. Who is going to know? Well, when I started coming out, and I wasn't ready to come out publicly, but I wanted to talk to friends, I went to talk to a queer faculty member at Columbia, and I asked her, who can I talk to? I want to talk to a friend, not just to professionals, but who can I trust? So she was like, you know what? It was the summer of 2015, right after the Supreme Court decision, and it was very popular to have rainbow filters on Facebook. She's like, go on Facebook, look who had a rainbow filter on their profile picture. You know you can trust them. Now, I don't know how many people put a rainbow filter on Facebook and we're like, yeah, because maybe I have a friend who's going to look and I want him to support, yet I'm going to assume I'm not the only one who would pick up on that and being like, oh, this is what you can do. Another very important part when it comes to trans people is don't exoticize us, which is hard even for sometimes people in the LGBTQ community. My rule usually when people ask, can I ask you something? I'm like, you can ask me whatever you want, but in general, if you want to know if you can ask a trans person something, then the answer is probably no. If you don't know if you can ask, don't ask it. Another important part is, and these go specifically for professionals in every field, and a professional doesn't mean you're an academic professional. You run a store, you do anything. Get yourself educated on which resources are available in your area. Anyone, and I'm not trying to brag, but I am trying to brag because I did my homework for that. Anyone in the LGBTQ community in New York City who's going to walk up to me, hey, I struggle with X, Y, and Z, what can I do? I probably can't help everyone. I'm not a therapist. But I know exactly what to tell them. And I know who to send them to. Each and every one of you, I know it's Utah, and I don't know, it's just like a blue state or red state, I've lost track. But either way, there are LGBTQ support networks in every big city. Educate yourself. If someone is coming out to you, or you suspect that you might have a way to help someone, know where you can send them. Know which resources you can give them. Now, I want to talk about one other topic that I have no idea how popular it is in Utah and in this place. I've been here for exactly 24 hours so far. And I used to think that the way I grew up is very similar to the LDS church. I quickly learned that I grew up more like FLDS. Not even. They're not as sheltered as we are, I think, to some extent. In the last few months, I've been working with people coming from different fundamentalist backgrounds with the help of an organization in New York called Formerly Fundamentalist. And my goal is to try to create a support network for trans people coming from fundamentalist religious backgrounds. It's hard to exactly define it, but I'm thinking the definition of that would be a community where it's literally impossible. I met today during lunchtime with an amazing group. I don't know if I can say the name of that group or not. Nicole? Yeah, there you go, Mama Dragons, which is a beautiful organization. It's like people, parents of LGBT kids in the LDS church. Unfortunately, where I come from, that's not an option. You can't have such an organization because it's not like you can be gay and try to fit in, you're going to work hard. You can't, period. You can't be trans. There is simply no way. So for communities like these, there's something that we can all do. Whatever it is, supporting organizations, such as in my case, it's an organization called Footsteps, which is helping people that are leaving ultra-orthodoxy. But there's organizations like that I don't know if there's FLDS people, like for people trying to help them. I'm not aware, there might be. Do you know of an organization? Okay, but there is, so look them up. I know there's an organization called Muslimish, helping people coming from Muslim communities. If you're looking for an LGBTQ community that is today still living not in the 60s, but in 200 years ago, that need extra help, is people coming from formerly fundamentalist communities. You got my website on there. This is just like a nice graph of my homepage. There's some resources there. There's links. There's my email. Please, if you want to help out, we need emotional support. We need financial support. Each of these organizations, and unfortunately, every religion has some form of a group that doesn't even hate trans people yet, that haven't even recognized that we exist. And if you want to help, please help us. Thank you all so much. Thank you to Equality Utah and to everyone here.
Thank you to everyone who came to QTalks. I just wanted to highlight our next QTalks is on January 10th. Thank you to Kylie, Abby, and Justin. Let's give them all one more round of applause. Thank you.